was in Galleria Mall way back before COVID, and there were two girls who were speaking German. And I usually get excited when I hear somebody speak German because it's the language that I speak. I speak Hochdeutsch, which it's like saying High German, but it just means Hochdeutsch. And Swiss Germans really do think their German is better. It's like the British English, they've got the accent and all of that. But the two girls, I was in the bathroom cubicles and they were speaking German, and I just in the bathroom, I was just like listening in, and then they started talking about me actually. And then they started saying how, my garment was pretty and I had a scarf on. And I thought, okay, that's cute. And then just as I'm about to come out, the other one then says, oh, but not all of them are like that. And some of them just do this. And, if they can't assimilate, they should go back. And it turned from the beautiful headscarf to, oh my God, like this whole one-sided polarized politics conversation. And so I'm like, holy shit, they probably just don't know I speak German. So when they wash their hands, and then I'm still listening, just pretending like I'm not getting it. I'm just washing my hands. And then they dried their hands and threw the napkins just in the garbage. And I just said, throw your attitude in the garbage while you at it. And I said in German, and looked, and then they just walked away.
That is gold.
So just be careful. You never know who speaks the language around you. You just be careful.
I have to make that my own bit right there. Just clip that little part out. That's a great story.
But this reminds me, the first time, funny story, my first experience just being Black, when I was in kindergarten in Switzerland, my teacher so we were reading a book, and the image on the book was an African woman. She was so beautiful, and she had a fruit basket, and she was carrying it on her head. And so you already know where this is going. So the teacher then says to me being really the only Black kid, and really I was kind of like a Black immigrant too. My teacher just looks at me and says, and my teacher was phenomenal. She then says to me, Juweria, can you balance a fruit basket on your head too? Do you know how to do that? And I was like, no, actually I don't. So I went home and I shared this with my mom, and I said, hey Mom, my teacher asked me if I could do this, and I wasn't sure, but it sounded like she kind of felt like I should have known how to do this. And I was like, am I supposed to know this skill? And I just don't know how to do this because you need to teach me. She was like, well, and my mom just really oblivious to this. You have to also know this. This is the first time here in, anywhere outside of Africa. She was like, no, some people know how to do that, but even I can't do that. So she might have just asked you. Now thinking about this, I wish I could really just go back to my teacher and just have a better, dialogue. Obviously then I was just in kindergarten, but that was kind of like the first time, my experience really just looking back and saying, okay, so I am Black. I am actually a little bit different from the kids around me. And just really what that meant. I don't think she meant anything wrong, and I would be the first person defending her even today. But just how wrong and naive and narrow-minded that comment is to say.
Yeah, like that. No, that's a very, very ignorant thing to say out for. But the way you just went about it though was beautiful, because you understood that it was just ignorance. She didn't know what she was saying. She probably meant she probably just wanted to engage in conversation with you. Just that was the first thing that popped in her head, even though it was completely ignorant. Yeah. But like, instead of being like, oh, we need to cancel her and get her fired from her job, your reaction was, I wish I could go back and have a dialogue with her. That was, I couldn't think of a better way to go about the situation. I feel like we need more of that. You go on social media, on Facebook and Twitter, and all you see is attacking people, everybody. People on the same side attack each other, people on opposite sides attack each other. But where's the dialogue at? You know what I mean?
And I think because we have this expectation of, we're not even hearing each other. It's like the person makes the point, and the next person kind of is already preparing the defense mechanism, what they're going to say next. Yep. It's not about processing what the person said. That dialogue is not happening, unfortunately.
That's so true. That's a good point, is that we now have certain set of talking points for every worldview. Yeah. So if you're a conservative, you have your talking points as the government has too much power, whatever the talking points are. There's a whole list of them. And then people on the left have their talking points. And when they try to engage in debate, it's just throwing the talking points at each other, and nobody's actually coming from a place of heart.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, from a very early on, I just learned that when multiple points of views are just expressed, no matter what space or platform or topic it is, it just forces everyone to justify their position. I think if people are forced to do that, you kind of self-reflect and you're like, wait a minute, do I really want to go down this route? There isn't really that justification mechanism. But you're right, we have to have some mechanism of actually just communicating. But we're so polarized. It's polarizing in politics, in our institutions, pretty much every space is polarizing, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you see what we see most of the time and hear and look on social media, Twitter, whatever, we see the far right and the far left. They're the loudest ones, but they're not really the majority. Most people are in the middle, and like people in the middle need to speak out more, but most people in the middle don't want to. And that's
most people in the middle just sometimes don't know how to. I think there's so many allies and people genuinely, and for the most part, it's just like my teacher, people who mean well, who are in these spaces and just don't know actively what to do or how to even engage. Maybe it's just because your experience, you can relate to it. It's not something that you're actively facing. And if it's not, and if you're not in those little bubbles, then you are totally excluded from this. But you're still in the dominant group, but you're definitely not in those two polarizing sections, right?
Right.
So you're absolutely right. There's so many people, a majority fall into the medium. Actually, if it wasn't, we would not have this United States of America.
For the third time in this podcast, again, the way you handled it. You could have lashed out at them and said, "You racist son of a blah, 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 blah." And you just said a couple words and walked away. Because you understand that people think, people have thoughts like that. Some people just won't say it. They said it because they didn't think you'd hear them. But now you recognize that people can go from 0 to 100 real quick. They can act really nice, but in the back of their head, what are they really thinking?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? But you put them in their place just by being humble and being, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and hopefully that checks them, next time, hopefully, they don't start speaking a language around, and maybe they just keep those narratives to themselves.
And you know what I was just thinking just now? Imagine how much more effective that is than if say you were to lash out at them, they would be like, see, I told you they're all like that.
Right.
You didn't do that. So can you imagine what they thought? Like that seed probably planted in their head and it's going to grow later on. Like you actually did something effective, which was not engage in being lowering yourself down to that level, but being above that level and still bringing justice, letting justice be known that that's not okay.
And hopefully both of them are in a space like this where I'm sharing this story. Maybe they're sharing it from their perspective, right? And saying, unfortunately, at some point I did this or we did this, and this individual said this to us, and that was it. That was kind of my awakening, and that was the last time. So you never know. I mean, there's no way of me tracking down who those two girls were. They were in Galleria Mall. I hope at some point maybe our paths cross as I share this story, but I'd like to be optimistic enough to think that maybe because of that incident, it also changed them,
Wow. It's amazing because you're hoping the best for them, and you're not hoping that something bad happens to them. You know what I mean? That's deep, though. That's deep. There's a verse in the Bible that says we're not dealing with flesh and blood, but we're dealing with powers and principalities. It's like it's not about, and there's a million ways to interpret that, but in the context of what we're talking about, it's not about the color of someone's skin or who they are or what their religion is. It's about, everybody is their own individual. You know what I'm saying? Everybody, there's bad people of different faiths. There's good people of different faiths. It happens everywhere. We're dealing with ideas. We're dealing with mindsets. We're dealing with ideology, not just people and who they are, where they're from, the skin color. You know what I'm saying?
Some people, some of those bad ideas are grandfathered into them. It's part of the system that they were asked to live and be a part of, and that's the only system they know, unfortunately. And that's not really to justify and say it's okay, but that narrow perspective, similar to the teacher that I had, that's what she knew.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we get to the point, and I think we really are getting to the point. More people are educated, and for those that are not, there's the internet that's really bringing us together. So
yeah.